Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast podcast. It's FA Cup weekend again. There's been many surprises, most of them quite obvious, some less so obvious. So let's tuck straight in. I am your host Kris and I'm joined by my usual co-companions for the week's action, Ross and Josh. Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Good evening.
So as we said in the outset there, we've got lots of FA Cup stuff to talk about, as well as our usual trip around the EFL section as well. So we'll come to that later. So we're going to start with FA Cup now. We should say off the bat, we're recording this pre-Sutton Arsenal. So apologies to any Sutton or Arsenal fans. The game has not been played yet. We might touch upon it later on if we get the time. But we'll jump straight into the fixtures and we're going to start probably, well, there isn't any probably about it really, the biggest shock of this round. Ross, I think we both said, I think all three of us actually said last week, this was an opportunity for Burnley to extend that irrepressible home record, go deep in the FA Cup, maybe even win it. And then Lincoln rocked up.
Yes, and fully deserved something from the game. I'm not sure about actually winning it because it was a very scrappy 90 minutes. At the same time, the whole point of being the smaller team in a cup tie like this is just staying in it for as long as possible and getting your goal, hopefully as late as you possibly can, so the bigger teams don't have a chance to reply, and that is exactly how it went down. So, fantastic result. I can't say I thoroughly enjoyed the match because it was a bit dogged. It was quote unquote classic FA Cup, but it's not, the free flowing football that we've become used to. But certainly an excellent performance from Lincoln, and you can't overstate what an incredible achievement that is. I think it's 104 years or something similar to that since a non-league team was at this stage in the Cup, so incredible achievement.
Yeah, that it was. What was your views, Josh? Were you surprised by the outcome? It sounds like a silly thing to say because it's Lincoln beating Burnley, but it had all the makings of. The longer it went 0-0, you just had that feeling, didn't you?
Absolutely, it was a huge surprise. I think there's no way to, overestimate how much of a surprise it was that this result came through. I was saying last week in the pod that it should be from next week that we should be looking to take Burnley out of your accumulators because they'll be going away from home. So Lincoln joined the illustrious group of Arsenal, City, Man City and Swansea beating Burnley. And absolutely fantastic job. And I think seeing the two brothers, the manager and his assistant manager, on Match of last night, this is the highlight of their year, and it's just absolutely fantastic for everybody involved in the club. And the fact they've managed to bring in over £1 million raised, and for a club the size of Lincoln, that's otherworldly in terms of money.
It's a massive amount of money, and they're about to get some more by the looks of things, or they could be about to get some more because we'll say at this point we have got the draw for the quarter-final. It's just been made. So breaking news, Chelsea versus Manchester United. So one of the big guns is going to go. Middlesbrough host either Huddersfield or Manchester City. Obviously, we'll cover these games in a moment. Tottenham versus Millwall. That could be something else.
Fight.
And Sutton United or Arsenal face Lincoln City. Now, would it be fair to say, Ross, that Lincoln will be cheering on Arsenal quite heavily tomorrow night because of the revenue, the opportunity to play at the Emirates Stadium and all that goes with it? Or might they look at this and think, actually, we'll cheer on the underdogs because we could get even further if we went to Sutton in the next round?
Well, I was about to say, if Sutton do go through in the next round, which I don't think they will personally, but if they do go and beat Arsenal on the Monday night, then Sutton versus Lincoln, I think, is a fantastic draw for both of them. It's, incredible, because someone's getting to the semi-final and someone's going to Wembley. So I think you as anyone, you have to look at that and kind of think, well, Arsenal are probably going to win this. And if Sutton do it, then fantastic. It's great for the Cup. It might not be great for Arsenal fans, but it's great for the Cup. It's great for Lincoln, etc. But I think at the moment they'll still be planning, thinking of Arsenal until further notice. But honestly, I think that's the best draw Lincoln could have hoped for out of the entire hat.
It's quite the draw, isn't it? Quite the draw. And just briefly looking at those other ties, any of those other ones sort of jump out at you at this stage?
If Huddersfield beat Man City, then Middlesbrough Huddersfield, but the others not overly. I mean, Tottenham Millwall sells itself because it's Millwall from League One, but we saw the team that Tottenham put out today in the FA Cup against Fulham. I would imagine they'll go for a similar team against Millwall because now they're in the quarterfinals, they'll be thinking they're winning it as well.
True, yeah, very true. Josh, your immediate thoughts on the draw?
Yeah, I think it's a good London derby in there with Tottenham Millwall. You've got Middlesbrough, Man City / Huddersfield. That would be an interesting game. I think when that comes round, I'm not sure how Middlesbrough will be looking in terms of league form, so whether or not they'll have their eye elsewhere come this tie. Chelsea Man United is an absolutely huge fixture to come through and pop out. That's the return of Mourinho again down to Stamford Bridge. I think that would be a very, very tasty tie from there. And then we'll see what happens tomorrow evening, but suspect, and want to touch all of the wood that's currently around me, it'll be Arsenal-Lincoln. But it could be the case that we're guaranteed a non-league side in the next round in the semi-final, and they're going to Wembley, and that would be absolutely huge.
Yeah, that really would be huge, wouldn't it? Absolutely right. And enough of you touching your wood on this podcast. Thank you very much. Before we leave Lincoln behind, Ross, Mr. Joseph Barton, Esquire, up to his usual tricks yesterday. Has to be said, he wasn't alone in this, was he? There was a little bit of play acting from, was it the chap's name? Was it Mulholland? I have to look up his name. There was a little bit of handbags going on, and the big centre forward, who I think, arguably, is it Matt Reed? He looks like your dad's brother's uncle who sort of kicks about on a Sunday morning. I mean, he's a big fat bloke, but he's useful, and he didn't have caused Burnley some problems. You sort of pro Joey Barton style winding the opposition up in games? Do you think it's part of English football tradition, or do you kind of not want to see that at this level of football?
I think it's part of Joey Barton, and that's about as much as you're going to get from it. You know, I think it's the same with Shane Long. Everyone I've ever spoken to about Shane Long have always said, how can you defend him? He dives, he falls over, he holds his ankle, he does this, he does that. And I'm like, yeah, but he plays for my team, and I love it when he does that, because we get free kicks out of it and penalties and whatever else. We get people booked for it. You know, when it's your team, I don't think you really care until they put you under immense pressure. And Joey Barton did yesterday. Really should have got himself sent off for some of the stuff he was doing. So it's kind of like Mario Balotelli as well. You see him playing for Nice, and he's a great player to have around because he offers you so much. I think Joey Barton's main gift is leadership and what he brings to the players around him, but he does also bring that risk factor, which people like you and I will sit back and say, well, we shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. How can anyone support that? And I'm sure if you go and ask Burnley fans, they're more than happy to see him putting himself around and getting in people's faces. So he's just one of those guys. He's a quote-unquote character. If he was in my team, I think I'd enjoy him. Same with Diego Costa as well. But if he's on other people's teams and he does it against your team, then you kind of go, nah, that's not really what I want to be seeing. So.
Hugely talented, but a bit of a muppet. I think that's the way we're going to go with that one. But yeah, huge congratulations to Lincoln City, and that's obviously that's a massive achievement that they've made. And I noticed something interesting as well in their entire matchday squad yesterday. Every single player was from England or Ireland. Two Irish players, excuse me, and the rest of them were completely English lineup. With the outstandingly named Waterfall at the back, which is just a great name, isn't it? So, yes, congratulations to brothers Cowley, and their reward potentially could be a trip to Arsenal or indeed Sutton. So we shall see where that one pans out. Moving on to the next game then, there's a couple of 3 o'clock kickoffs. Josh, what did you make of Middlesbrough 3, Oxford 2? Because I think we all thought this was going to be a dull sort of 1-0 lucky Middlesbrough goal off someone's bum in the 90th minute type of game, but it didn't prove to be that in the end, did it? Yeah,
it was certainly billed as a damp squib, but was anything but that. There was a superb free kick in there from, I believe it was Maguire, which is his 5th free kick of the season that he's put through. That was for Oxford's first goal from there. But Borough taking an early commanding lead, and it did look like they were going to rack up a cricket score. But fair play to Oxford, showing some great resolve to bring it back and only losing it to a 86th minute winner from Stuani. Negredo with just showing the class that he's got as a hold-up man, just managing to wrestle off the defenders and get anything on it to knock it into the Stuani's path to put it in at the back post. I think Oxford were very unlucky. They've shown before that they've got those kind of performances in their locker. So, yeah, fair play to them.
Yeah, very, very good results for Middlesbrough. And it just goes to show, Ross, they can score goals, but would you argue that the reason they score goals, with all due respect to Oxford, is because it was Oxford? Because they need to find these goals in the Premier League, don't they, at the moment? And is this FA Cup, is this a sign that they might have just worked out the way to goal, or is it a little bit of a false dawn in that they're just playing lesser opposition?
I'm more inclined to say it's the latter as of now, but when we get to the Premier League next weekend, maybe we'll see that they can carry it on. But I did see glimpses of the Championship Middlesbrough that I saw so much last season. They have the room to play it like that against a team like Oxford, especially at home. So I'm not expecting them next week to go and get 6 goals against whoever it is they're playing, but it was hopefully a confidence booster and a reminder that they can go out there and they can play some decent stuff and they can put the ball in the back of the net more than once every month. So hopefully it's something they can bring on forward, but at the moment I'm tempted to say it was quote-unquote just because it was Oxford.
Yes, I think I'm in that camp as well. And a goal for Rudy Justed is a bonus, certainly for him, and seeing Stuani back on the score sheet as well is equally good for Borough, because they are probably going to be 2 players quite useful in their fight against relegation potentially. So good performance from Oxford, take nothing away from them. They'll feel a little bit aggrieved to lose that late goal, but nevertheless Borough are through. And of course we know that they will face Huddersfield Town or Manchester City, and the very fact there's 2 clubs there would suggest that this was a draw. Must stick with you for a minute. I think all 3 of us last week said this could be a game that City may toil in, struggle in. I'm not sure anyone saw it being a 0-0 draw, given the attacking talent both sides have and Huddersfield's home record. But a 0-0 draw is what it was. What did you make of this from both sides' perspectives?
I don't think either of them want the replay. Don't get me wrong. Huddersfield have got far more interesting things happening in the Championship this year. They shouldn't be where they are, but they've proved everyone wrong with a fantastic style of play, which I think we could all agree is fantastic to watch. So they won't want a replay. They'll want to keep themselves fresh for the playoff chase, and indeed the promotion chase, because that could still open up. Manchester City, we all know, are having some problems here and there across the field. Certainly haven't made the kind of impact under Pep Guardiola that it was certainly expected of him, and they have a very, very tricky fixture in the Champions League coming up against Monaco. So a replay away at Huddersfield is not going to be their ideal result. At the same time, I think on the balance of play, it was probably fair because they both had some decent chances. And honestly, if either one of them had won this 1-0, I don't think anyone would have complained. So it's probably fair on the balance of play, but neither of them will want another fixture on their list.
No, I would agree with that. As you say, Man City's focus clearly the Champions League, and their sort of starting lineup suggested a little bit of a nudge towards Tuesday. Josh, you actually thought Huddersfield could and probably should win this game. They were close, weren't they? And they had the chances. Was it 2 disallowed goals? I seem to remember listening to this commentary. Do you think their chance has gone now? Do you fully expect City to bulldoze them at the Etihad?
I'm not sure really on that one. I still think Huddersfield have got a chance, even if they do go to the Etihad. I think there will be a lot of pressure on Man City, especially after their Champions League round, which I think we're calling as potentially they could slip up in there against Monaco. So I think there could be a lot of pressure on Pep Guardiola to get a result in this game and have to put out a good full-strength side. Although he did in this game, the likes of Aguero was starting in the team, and you had Nolito as well, who also had a couple of chances, but I think this could still be a banana skin for Pep Guardiola and Man City. We'll have to see whenever the replay is played, which I would assume would be sometime late next week or the week after.
I think if you look back at the last round, we only had one replay, which was Leicester Derby, and in the first time they played each other, it was about 5-6 changes each in and around, and then the replay was about 10. I reckon you'll probably get the same thing with City and Huddersfield, especially if City's Champions League fixture goes awry in midweek.
Yeah, that's going to be key, isn't it? Excuse me. That Champions League game. If the first leg goes well, then I expect to see a strong lineup in the replay. If it doesn't go so well, be very interesting to see what sort of lineup they put out. So I do expect Man City to come through this tie, but it's going to be one of those. It's going to be tough, I think. So Huddersfield's style, would you say that suits an away game, Ross? Because they've got pace, haven't they, on the counter attack? So they could still pose some threat at the Etihad if they play to that style. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Well, yeah, they press high, they break at pace down both wings. They've got a decent front man as well. They take their chances when they come. They didn't this weekend, but generally speaking, they do. They are a danger for anyone, and I think the Championship has seen that, full frontal this season, because no one expected them to be where they are, and they've just kind of swamped teams. And I remember that Brighton game we were watching a couple of weeks ago, where Brighton just looked like they'd never even heard of Huddersfield Town before, or just kind of rocked up, didn't really know what they were expecting, and that was full credit to the way that Huddersfield play. It's 100 mile an hour, and they do kind of just throw themselves at you. So City, now having this experience, will hopefully be a bit more ready for it, but they are always a danger, especially if they sense there's a chance to upset a club the size of Man City.
Yeah, very true, very true. That's one we'll keep a close eye on. I think it's the only replay, actually, of this round so far anyway, so we'll keep an eye out for that one. Josh, let's move on to Millwall, who, of course, we can discuss their draw against Spurs in a moment, but a Sean Cummins 90th minute winner, magic of the FA Cup. Is this a surprise, though? Because, Leicester, they just look, we said about this on this show many weeks running now. It just seemed to be punch drunk. Is it 10 changes I think Ranieri made? Didn't make a blind bit of difference. And Millwall even had 10 men for the majority of the second half. So is this a shock?
I thought with the vote of confidence that Ranieri got last week, and him saying that he needs to maybe pick these players on form rather than reputation, that we would see something different from them. The likes of Gray come in, who has looked absolutely brilliant for them, as well as Kapushka from who they brought in over the window, who I thought was very, very good player, had a very good Euros. And I thought they had a chance here against Millwall, but again, it looks like they're bereft of ideas and creativity, and I don't think Ranieri's got the answers anymore. So I'd be very interested to see what happens in this run-up to Sevilla that they've got midweek, and then Liverpool on the weekend. So I'm not sure if he could stay there any longer, but we've got quite bad form with trying to say that manager's going to get sacked with Alex Neil as well.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see.
It's I think he's definitely pushing it. I know there's a lot of talk on the BBC phone-ins this weekend about Ranieri, and a lot of Leicester fans were, some were pro, some were against, and it was very, very split down the middle. So I can't help but wonder if this week is pivotal.
They did have a very interesting conversation on Soccer Saturday this weekend. They were talking about this fixture, and they said, what is the best result for Leicester? Because if they lose, confidence is still down, and they're still losing. If they win, they got another fixture. If they draw, they've got at least one more fixture. Even if they win that, they then have another one after that. Was there a decent result for Leicester here? I can't say that any would have been. Honestly, for Leicester, it probably would have been better if they'd gone out in the previous round to Derby. This time round, it just kind of felt like a bit of an impossible task. And if I'm honest, this is probably the best result. But even then, it's still a very damaging one.
I think it's the best result if they get a result in Sevilla and then take that full on to the Premier League. Trouble is, we said that since Christmas, didn't we, after their Champions League ended? So, yeah, and if they get, if they get humped in Spain, they're playing at home first. No, they are playing away first. If they get humped in Spain, you look at the next few fixtures in the Premier League, home to Liverpool, home to Hull, away at Arsenal, and then Sevilla again. Wow. Doesn't really bode thinking about, and that lineup that Leicester pulled out in this game. Robert Zola got a starting goal, not a big surprise. Ben Luan, Volgay, Chilwell, King, Mendy, Amati, Kaputska, Gray, Okazaki and Musa. it's not a bad lineup, is it? And yet, they were just poor. So not good. But we should give some credit to Millwall, Ross, shouldn't we? Because obviously they've got this lucrative tie with Spurs, which I would hasten to suggest that the Met Police in London will not be particularly looking forward to. From either supporters, I would have to say. It's not a Millwall thing. It's anybody in London sort of tie at this stage of an FA Cup is going to cause potential security issues. So that aside, they've earned this tie with a really battling performance, especially as we said with 10 men in that second half.
Yeah, and again, it was same with Lincoln. The job of a lower league team in these kinds of fixtures is to stay in it as long as possible and get a goal as late as possible, so they can't respond. I think the thing that is very impressive is they did it with 10 men. I know that it's sometimes easier to play with 10 men because you know what you all know what your jobs are, and it's much more structured and defensive. So there is an argument to be said that the 10 men may have actually helped Millwall, but it's still very impressive. This is still a decent Leicester side on its day. So, yeah, I think there's something along the lines of 13 unbeaten in League One, if I've got the stat right, but I'm mixing them up with several other clubs that I've got stats for now. So I know they're on a long unbeaten run, and this will be another huge momentum boost for them in the playoff run. But you don't get this far in the FA Cup without being a little bit good, and certainly Millwall have been a little bit good.
Yeah, very, very good, and fair play to them. And obviously, they've had a bit of a turmoil season with the issue of the ground, and I know, and obviously, we were sort of tongue in cheek about the police situation, but they do get a bad rap, don't they? And don't get me wrong, there are some wrong people who support Millwall, as there are some wrong people who support many clubs up and down the country. And I think it's a little bit unfair to scapegoat Millwall. And I think the issues of sort of the 80s and whatnot still has a bit of a stain on the club, and it would be nice to see them progress further, in this FA Cup. And no bias in that at all, of course. The only downside, of course, is that when they got to the final, was it against Manchester United, it all kicked off then, didn't it? So I guess some people would say leopard and spots. But nevertheless, this is a great run for them. And I saw a stat, was it the other day, that Millwall beaten more Premier League sides this calendar year than Liverpool. So that's a stat they can enjoy for a while. So good result, nevertheless. And Leicester's turmoil season goes on. Speaking of a season going on, though, Ross, Chelsea comfortable through against Wolves at Molineux. Wolves were in the game for long periods without really threatening to do too much, and then ultimately goals from Pedro and Diego Costa late on secured the victory for Chelsea, who we now know, of course, will face Manchester United. Fairly routine overall for Conte's men.
Yeah, I'd say so, but I also think they got a tougher game than they thought they were going to get. I think there was a certain aspect of, we've still got some very good attackers on, so we'll probably have this done by half-time. And Wolves again turned up and gave a very good side a very good game. Unfortunately, this time, unlike against Liverpool, you didn't really see much of the forward line. I don't think Helder Costa was as influential as he was against Liverpool. Certainly, John Daddy Bodvarsson wasn't as influential as he was against Liverpool. So Chelsea did well to mitigate some of the counter-attacking elements of Wolves' play. But I thought Wolves did themselves proud. They still put in a very good performance, and they can be, in my opinion, very happy with their FA Cup run this year.
Yeah, and speaking of that FA Cup run, do you think that they are favourites for the double now, Josh? I mean, they look pretty unstoppable, don't they, Chelsea at the moment? And even when they're not playing brilliantly, which I think it would be fair to say they weren't amazing yesterday, but they never really looked like they were under any pressure, even when Wolves were sort of trying to pin them back. So are they odds-on favourites to win this double now, or do you think Mourinho going back to Stamford Bridge can throw a bit of a spanner in the works?
I think they certainly had a few scares against Wolves. I think Wolves hit the post a couple of times, and Begovic was looking rusty, we'll put it that way, with his goalkeeping. But yeah, as you say, they ground through. They got the win that they needed, and that's the tale of Chelsea's season. I think so far they're methodically going through, winning every game, and I think with the Man United game, it's going to be a very good tie for them. I think that is what decides whether or not they win the FA Cup. Otherwise, I think if they don't, I think it's probably Arsenal's, but they've still got to get through their tie against Sutton. But we'll have to look at the draws for the semis, but I do think Chelsea are probably second favourites for this.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought they just look menacingly ominous at the moment, just like that machine, just grinding through every game. And Conte's pre or post match press conference was quite amusing when he sort of did the bowing gesture to Lincoln, which I thought was quite a nice touch. So fair play to him. Got a sense of humour, that man, which is always a good thing in football. Speaking of sense of humours, though, Ross, Fulham won't have too much of a sense of humour as the first of the Sunday games got underway, and a certain Harry Kane popped up with a hat trick, which rather extinguished the bubble, or burst the bubble, I should say, extinguished the fire of Fulham's run under Slavisa Jokanovic. Men against boys a bit, wasn't it? Spurs were ultimately hugely impressive, and Millwall just never really were in the Fulham, were never really in this tie, were they, for long periods?
No, I think that has a big part to play in the fact that Tottenham played their full strength side. You know, they did very little rotation, and it's clear that Pochettino wants to make sure they get this cup. I don't know the last time that Spurs won the FA Cup, let alone any cup. So this will be one that they're targeting because of the big name scalps that are being pulled off so far this year. But I also think that they kind of recognise, I think Pochettino mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, that the top four is a tough ask. You know, it's a very competitive top four this year. So they need to make sure they're in Europe somehow. So they'll be targeting the FA Cup, and they certainly did against Fulham. And Fulham, I've seen enough of Fulham to know they can play a heck of a lot better than they did against Tottenham. But I'm willing to say it was purely because Tottenham went full strength. You know, they didn't do much in the way of changes. So Fulham will be disappointed with the way they played. But again, they'll have much bigger fish to fry because they are still with an outside chance of the playoffs in the Championship. So. Yeah,
I'm still banging my Fulham drum. I'm still convinced they can make it. Well, maybe not, but you never know. But yeah, this obviously was a bonus game for them, wasn't it? And yes, Spurs were impressive. Josh, the kit aside, because it is hideous, Spurs were very, very good today, weren't they? You know, back to the sort of slick best. And do you think it was maybe a little bit of reverse psychology from Mauricio Pochettino playing such a strong side after they were, you know, really poor in midweek in the Europa League? Was it sort of almost a bit of one of those tongue lashings and you know, get out there and prove me wrong, essentially, to those first team players used today?
Yeah, I think it was exactly that. He is not prone, but will rotate his fullbacks between games for the cup games. But with Rose being out at the moment, it's Ben Davies got another chance to go in and, as you say, prove him wrong. So I think this was more of not a punishment, because that would undermine the FA Cup as a competition, but he was certainly sending the guys back out to say, right, you could have had a weekend off if you'd performed, but you know, you're straight back in, going for this. And Tottenham's best chance at getting any kind of silverware in the last 10 years would be through the cup competitions. And I just don't think they've gone through and given them the respect they needed. So this is really a chance for Spurs to get a trophy. And I think they've got to just take it seriously, and they could do it, because I think in Europe they're not necessarily playing to their strengths.
Agreed. I have this awful feeling that we're going to get a Spurs-Arsenal semi-final if results go both clubs' way. I just got this really nagging feeling in the back of my mind. But is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Who knows? And we can only speculate at this point. But one thing's for sure, Spurs were mightily impressive and deserved the victory in that game. And the final game of the FA Cup weekend, at least, was also on the Sunday. Ross, we saw Blackburn take the lead over Manchester United. Danny Graham, to be honest, he's been so bad for so long. I forgot that A, he was a footballer, and B, that he could score such a good goal, because it was a lovely goal. Really, really fantastic finish. But then Manchester United do what Manchester United used to do. Rashford with the equaliser after a delicious pass from Henrik Mkhitaryan, who was outstanding on the day, albeit given the freedom to do so pretty much for the whole pitch. And then that man, the man who's finished, the man who is definitely not good enough for English football, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, popping up with the winner, and United safely through. But it wasn't plain sailing, was it? And Blackburn fans will look at their club today and think, well, if we can do this in the FA Cup, why are we where we are in the Championship?
Well, that's a whole different question, frankly. But they were very good against Man United. They did run them quite close. Even in the last few minutes, they had the ball plenty of times down the other end of the pitch. Some good corners, good attempts, and pulled a couple of good saves. I think they had one disallowed as well, didn't they? It was a clear offside, but they were still putting pressure on them right up until the end. So the thing is with Blackburn is it's very easy to get yourself up for a game against a side like Man United. You look at Danny Graham, who, like you say, has been so poor for so long. You do kind of forget that he is actually a good striker under that, and he's now into double figures, but they're not seeing enough of their big name players. You did get to see a couple of prospects come through though. Mahoney came on late in the game, and you also had how do I say his name now? Ryan Nyam. Yeah, Ryan Nyam. He was on the bench. He didn't get to come on, but I know he's very well thought of at Blackburn as well. Very strong, very quick for his age. So Blackburn again, like the other Championship teams, they may have gone out, but they will see this as a platform to step up and carry on through the end of the back end of the Championship season. But I think overall they'll still be relatively happy with the way they played against Man United. Like I said, they ran them quite close even till the 90th minute.
Yeah, and it was only really after that quality of Pogba and Ibrahimovic came on that it really started to turn the game. Proper FA Cup weather as well, absolutely chucking it down in Blackburn. And Josh, I mean, obviously we've touched on the fact that United are going to have to play Chelsea in this next round. If looking at it from the United perspective, if they can dump out Chelsea, would they then be installed as the favourites for this trophy? Because it is a trophy Mourinho likes to win. It is a trophy he plays a full-strength side in. And when you've got the sort of forward attacking talent that they have, which they clearly do have, and they've got a match winner like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, surely they've got to be considered as one of those clubs who could potentially win it if they can get through Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whoever comes out of that tie is basically the favourite to then win the competition overall. We know what Mourinho's like in cup competitions. As you said, it's this and the EFL Cup that he generally targets in his first season, just to kind of make sure and get that winning mentality into the squad very early on. And I think that's where we'll be looking. And I think they could do really well in this competition. That tie will be a big one, that Chelsea Man United one. I don't think we can underestimate that tie at all. Both teams will be going for it, hammer and tongs, to try and get a big bit of silverware, which hopefully should boost the profile of the FA Cup even higher, to show that these teams are giving it the respect even from the offset of when they're joining the competition in the third round.
Yeah, absolutely. A good point, well made. And of course, the fact that in theory, and it is only theory at this stage, we could potentially see a Manchester derby and a North London derby in semi-finals if the draw was to go the way that it could. So it'll be very, very interesting to see who comes out of what tie. So they are the teams that obviously have qualified, and of course the Man City Huddersfield replay will have to be played. Sutton Arsenal, we should just very briefly preview this game. It's going to be shown tomorrow on BBC television in the UK, and I'm sure on various channels across the world. Massive game, Ross, for Sutton, but it's just as big a game for Arsenal all of a sudden after certain events which we won't speak of last week in Munich. Si?
Yes, but only really to save face. If they win, I don't think it solves many of the problems that are currently plaguing, especially the Arsenal fan base. If they lose, then it's nuclear war among Arsenal fans. I think a win it's desperately needed, but only to stave off some of the torture that could be coming for Arsenal fans in the coming week. If it was to go as badly as it did last week against Bayern Munich. But yeah, obviously it's a fixture now that Arsenal have to take a lot more seriously, because they need to make sure that some fan frustration that's been boiling over for the past 7 days doesn't really start to kick off. But it's barely worth thinking about what could happen to Arsenal fans, especially if Arsenal do go out on Monday night.
Yes, less said about that, the better. And Josh, putting Arsenal aside for a minute, because whatever way we look at it, it is pretty likely that Arsenal will be installed as the favourites, and surely rightly so. In fact, they're 1-6 on current betting odds. But is this just a massive night for Sutton as a club, full stop, irrespective of the result? I mean, yes, it could end up being a close one. Arsenal could end up stuffing them. Who knows? But it's more about the occasion, the TV, the money. The whole thing is going to boost a club of this size massively, isn't it? And that's surely what it's all about.
Absolutely. We've already spoken previously about the kind of money that Lincoln have generated from their run, and the fact that this game is played at Sutton's home ground, so they've got their artificial pitch, which is going to give them an advantage that they play on it week in, week out. It just means that Arsenal's preparation would have to have changed from normal games where they'll probably just have had to play and train on the 3G pitches they've got as part of their training complex anyway. But I think everyone around Sutton's just going to be so buoyed by the occasion that this is where you see FA Cup upsets happen, is when a team is just so high on adrenaline that that's what's going to get them through the game. And I think we'll see on Monday night that it'll be a very nervy opening minutes for Arsenal if they don't, score early on, put it that way, to kind of make sure. And then I think it then becomes routine.
I was going to say, it's one of those, if Arsenal get an early goal, you can see it being 5, 6, 7. If it's sort of 0-0 with 25, 30 minutes gone and all half time, it's going to be one of those that just gets edgier and edgier. Or, of course, if Sutton take the lead, you can only imagine what the sort of impact that will have on both Arsenal's players' confidence and the fan base, although it's a very small fan base travelling. That said, I think, it could be potentially a tough night ahead. So at the risk of upsetting all of our Sutton listeners, which I'm sure there are, not very many, but at the risk of upsetting anybody who is following or supporting Sutton, I hope they get smashed. I'm just going to put that right out there right now. But one Twitter account that's worth a follow, if you don't and you fancy a little bit of sort of non-league banter, if you will. There's a Twitter account called Gandemonium, at Gandemonium. The bio simply states, non-league idiots talking bollocks about mostly football and mainly Sutton United of the National League 5th tier. So there you go. If you fancy following a sort of a non-league Twitter account which has a few amusing bits and bobs, they're worth looking up. So yes, we'll probably touch on this result. Well, we might potentially next week. We either will or we won't. It depends on the result.
If Arsenal lose, trust me, we're talking about it next week.
Oh, I might be ill that week. I'm permanently ill, actually. But yes, it'll be a big tie, and all the best to Sutton, irrespective of what happens. It's going to be massive for them. Right, okay, so that's the FA Cup done and dusted. We should just at this point give our listeners a heads up on what is coming next week as regards to the Premier League, because we've recorded a week later and I'm sure people won't remember what we said last week. So with the FA Cup done and dusted for another week, we've got the Premier League returning next week, and we see the fixtures Saturday at 3 o'clock. We've got Chelsea, Swansea, Palace, Middlesbrough. That's a big game all of a sudden. Everton, Sunderland, equally big for the away side. Hull, Burnley, huge. Southampton, Arsenal, of course, is postponed because little matter of a cup final. And West Brom, Bournemouth is the other 3 o'clock, with Watford, West Ham on the Saturday evening, with Spurs, Stoke, the early game on Sunday, and Leicester, Liverpool is the Monday fixture. And as we touched on there, Southampton in a cup final with Manchester United, which I'm sure Ross will be across next week. So that's, of course, in the EFL Cup. So that's your Premier League fixtures for next week. Right, let's delve into the exciting world of EFL then. Ross, give us your lowdown on what's been happening this week in the Championship and beyond.
So we're going to start with League Two, and the first thing I want to mention is something that happened in midweek, because we had, who did we have on a few weeks back? James on a few weeks ago, and he was talking about Leyton Orient. I want to mention Leyton Orient here because we mentioned Coventry and their woes last week, and Leyton Orient, I think, are in the only club in the country in worse state than Coventry at the moment. Again, you can find plenty on them. The BBC did a fantastic story about them, calling them a dead club walking a couple of weeks ago now. But this week, their season got even worse because their captain Liam Kelly got himself banned for 6 games for pushing a ball boy at the end of a game. So he's been banned for 6 games. They ended up not winning that game, and they came into this weekend captainless, and they also didn't win this weekend. They lost 3-2 to Notts County, which is a massive result at the bottom. Notts County starting to turn things around now under Kevin Nolan, but that now cuts Leyton Orient off 3 points in the bottom 2 in the League 2 table. So they're one to keep your eye on, Leyton Orient, mainly for the worst reasons, but they are a fascinating case study for other clubs. Other big results in this weekend's actually in the League 2. I laugh because I know what's coming. Cambridge 3, Newport 2. not normally the kind of game I would cover, but it's worth mentioning because Cambridge won with a last-minute penalty, and the man that gave away the penalty, Mitch Rose, got sent off because he slapped the red card that was being pulled out of the referee's pocket. Slapped it out of his hand and got himself sent off. So, fantastic story. If you're interested in the top end of League Two, then this weekend we had Carlisle winning 2-1, Plymouth drawing 1-1, and Doncaster drawing 1-1. What that does to the top three now is Doncaster are still 3 points ahead at the top of the table, but Plymouth, who are second, have a game in hand, so they could now catch Doncaster because of this weekend's results. And Carlisle, like I said a couple of weeks ago, without Charlie Wick, I do kind of worry for them in the playoff race. But at the same time, they're still third. They are still 5 points ahead of fourth place Luton Town. So still all to play for as we enter the last 15 or so games of the season. But certainly some missed opportunities, especially for Plymouth this weekend, who are starting to shake a little bit. League One, I did want to mention Coventry again this week. I know we covered them extensively last weekend, but it's worth mentioning this week. They finally got their first league win in 15 games with a 2-1 win over Gillingham Town. First win since November 1st, so fantastic win for Coventry. We also have a new manager in League One. He is now manager of Bury. His name is Lee Clark. You may recognise him from Huddersfield and Blackpool. He's left Kilmarnock in Scotland to come and manage Bury. Tough job on his hands at Bury, but I still think they're in with a decent chance of staying up. And they did themselves no harm this weekend with a 2-1 win over Chesterfield, which puts Chesterfield in even more trouble in the relegation zones. Again, in the playoff areas and the promotion places, you had some very big fixtures this weekend. Bradford 2, Bolton 2. 2 goals from Charlie Wick for Bradford there. And Sheffield United 1, Scunthorpe 1. Obviously a battle of the teams in the top two. That keeps Sheffield United 5 points clear, so I think they'll probably take that. But from memory, Scunthorpe were down to 10 men for most of the second half, so really should be getting something from that if you want to be kicking Scunthorpe away. But nonetheless, that means that the top two in the League One playoff places, Sheffield Wednesday clear at the top with 65 points, Sheffield United I should say, and Scunthorpe in second with 60, but they do also have a game in hand, so another missed opportunity there, but Sheffield United do still have that points gap there. In the Championship, we had some managerial records this week as well. Chris Hughton's 100th game in charge of Brighton. He has exactly a 50% win rate. I'm sure Josh can give us the exact stats a little bit later because they are very impressive. It's also Simon Grayson's 4th anniversary in charge of Preston this weekend. So to make it special, nearly 5,000 fans decided to wear Simon Grayson masks. I don't think they look like him. I think they look more like Woody from Cheers. But nonetheless, it was a haunting picture I saw on the BBC, and it didn't help them anyway because they only managed to draw 0-0 away at Wigan. And I also want to talk about Gianfranco Zola because Gianfranco Zola is an appointment I've been critical of since he came in at Birmingham. This weekend they lost 4-1 at home to Queen's Park Rangers, which didn't surprise me in terms of Queen's Park Rangers winning, but the sheer number of goals that QPR managed to score, including an absolutely fantastic free kick, which is well worth a watch, is a little bit embarrassing for Birmingham City. That now puts Zola at 14 games as manager, 1 win, 4 draws, 9 defeats, 9 scored, and 25 conceded. He said in his post-match press conference this week that he wanted to go and talk to the owners. Maybe that's to ask for money in the summer, or maybe that's going to be a lot of grovelling and crying, but a very, very unlucky weekend for him there, because 4-1 at home to QPR is a terrible, terrible result. Speaking of terrible results, though, you did also have 2 other pretty big stinkers for certain teams. Cardiff 5, Rotherham 0 is a bit of a shocker, not because Cardiff won, but because of the sheer scale of it. Rotherham have been the whipping boys this year, but 5-0 is a massive, massive result considering Cardiff were essentially in their position for most of this season. They have been turning around, and I think they're now up to mid-table, so they would like to consider themselves safe, but that is a bit of an embarrassing result for Rotherham. And Norwich City, starting to turn the corner, as we reported last week. This weekend they went away to Burton Albion, and they were on my accumulator this weekend. I thought, no, Alex Neil won't let me down this weekend, and they went away to Burton Albion and lost 2-1. Always a tough fixture at this point in the year because Burton do desperately need the points, but still a bit of a shock result. And if you haven't seen the goal that Cameron Jerome scored, well worth a look, not because of its quality, sheerly because of its comedy. Brighton Hove Albion 2-0 winners at Barnsley. You had Ipswich 1, Leeds United 1, and Nottingham Forest 1, Sheffield Wednesday 2. Mainly notable because Nottingham Forest had a penalty in this game. The penalty was given away by Kieran Westwood, who slid out, got himself injured in the process. Penalty given. The penalty taker steps up and immediately saved by Westwood. It was a terrible penalty, but considering he was carrying a knock, fantastically well to get to it. So that is you caught up with the EFL. In terms of questions this week, Josh, and Kris, frankly, as well. I wanted to ask you, Zola, what exactly will he be saying to his owners this week? Because it's a very, very difficult situation now for him. Is he going to be asking for more money, or is he going to be apologising and seeing how much time he's got? What do you reckon, Josh?
I think it's going to be the latter on that. I think he does need to get some more time to try and implement what he's trying to do with this squad. They wanted more attractive football, so if they're happy to write off the fact that they're not going to get into the top 6 and into the playoffs this season, then I think they'll be happy to keep him on and allow him to have a summer window, a pre-season with the squad, and try and implement his ideas. And from the sounds of what's coming out of Birmingham at the moment, I think he is being given that time.
It's a bit of a messy situation, isn't it? With I mean, it's a really hard one to comment on, because when somebody brings in a manager like that, they're obviously looking for some sort of statement to be made, aren't they? And the trouble is with poor Franco is he's made exactly the wrong statement. But I understand, weirdly as it sounds, I do understand why they wanted to bring in a name ahead of Gary Rowett. I don't agree with it at all, but I understand why they wanted to do it. The problem I have with it is that they've brought in a man who wasn't really established. And that, I think that's the biggest problem. It's not like Franco Zola's ever had a particularly brilliant record. I mean, he had that one sort of decent half season with West Ham, didn't he? And, obviously he was a brilliant player, but we all know brilliant players don't always make brilliant managers, and vice versa. So it just seemed like a very strange appointment, and almost like the Leicester situation. It almost feels to me like they've got to that stage where nothing they can do seems to change their results. And when you look at, I mean, Ross, you'd be able to comment on this better than I would, but QPR are not a free scoring side, I don't think, particularly away from home. And you can clearly hear there's audible boos after the third goal goes in. And have to say in that game as well, Idrissa Silla's free kick is a thing of beauty. If you haven't seen that, do look it up. That's not one to get your delicate parts in front of, that's for sure. But it did strike me as a performance that was just so limp, and the Birmingham players, I don't really feel like they have any. I don't really feel like they're inspired by Zola. So I'll turn the question back on to you, Ross, to sum this one up. Do you see him staying? I mean, okay, yeah, he can ask for more money, and yeah, he can ask for more time, but are the Birmingham board going to put up with this? If this runs to the end of the season and they only get, let's say, 4 wins, are they going to look at it in the summer and go, we can't be doing with this?
Well, Josh has just put in the chat there a tweet from the BBC suggesting that Zola won't be going anywhere and the board still want to stick by him. For me, though, I reckon if it finishes and you haven't seen enough wins under Zola, if the league ends and they are 10th lower, and they've only won maximum of 5 games, I reckon they will be looking for a change because the results have been so poor. And I was also fascinated to hear from Gary Rowett. The other week they were on TV. I forget who they were playing, but Gary Rowett was the pundit that they brought on, and they were talking about his tactical style and how he set Birmingham up and how he'd set them up in this game. I have a funny feeling it was Sheffield Wednesday, but he was talking about his approach at Birmingham was, I went in there, I looked at what we had, and the good things I put forward, like Damari Gray on the wing, we made sure that he found space and we counter-attacked at pace, and in the weaker areas we just protected. And you look at the back line, especially at Birmingham, and under Zola there's very little protection of it because the style's changed. They're trying to pass it through, they're going side to side, and when teams break on them they're not getting that kind of protection they had beforehand. So I honestly think it is something to do with Zola. I think it's something to do with not being inspired by him and not really buying into him. But I think he's also asking something of the Birmingham players that they just can't do. They're just not used to. They were successful because, much like your Leicesters and your Bournemouths, they were better than the sum of their parts. And Zola has come in and almost treated them like they're a top-end championship side, and rather than what they were, which was a mid-table championship side that was completely overachieving under Gary Rowett, who just kind of knew the players better and knew what to do to get the best out of them. So I'm of the camp that it was a massive mistake, and it still continues to prove to be a massive mistake. If he wins less than 5, or even if he wins 5, I reckon at the end of the season you may see a change. But frankly, what do I know about Championship managerial changes after the discussions we've been having about Alex Neil? So at this point, it wouldn't surprise me. They have brought him in for a reason. They probably will back him. But I can't see it myself. I think the Birmingham faithful, again, much like Norwich did over the Christmas period, they've turned on him hugely. And when you see some of the performances they're putting in, it's not hard to understand why.
Yeah, true. One thing's for sure, something has to change there, whether it be results, managers, players, something has to change. It's a bit rotten indeed. And as for Alex Neil, I don't think you're alone in thinking he'd be gone, so you can't blame yourself for that.
Oh, no, I never wanted him gone. I think he's a fantastic manager, but I'm just stunned considering some of the vitriol he survived over Christmas especially.
So is he, I think, to be honest, if you asked him. But yeah, no, I'm with you. And a very brief word on Nottingham Forest as well. More bad luck for them. Missed penalty from Ross McCormack. Was he stuck behind the gates? Or
well, his penalty certainly was. It was terrible penalty. For a player of his quality in the Championship, those kinds of penalties shouldn't be happening, and you should certainly be beating an injured goalkeeper from the penalty spot. But the one bright spark, as I've mentioned him a couple of weeks ago now, but Ben Brereton, again impressed for Nottingham Forest. I had to sit here and listen to Soccer Saturday where Charlie Nicholas was watching the game, and he suddenly discovered that Ben Brereton was actually quite good as well, but he couldn't say his name properly. He kept dropping the first R in his name, and it was driving me mad. But yeah, he had a fantastic game. I can't remember if he was on the score sheet or not, but I certainly think he was involved in the goal. It was Ben Osborne that got the goal. But yeah, he was very, very impressive. But you kind of get the feeling that under Fawaz, if a bid comes in for Ben Brereton, much like it did with Ollie Burke in the summer, you kind of get the feeling that he won't be there and the manager won't even know about it. So it's tricky. I hope for everyone's sake there that they manage to find a buyer. But again, this weekend is a keen reminder that Nottingham Forest are in a heck of a lot of trouble, and it only really changes when they settle things at the top.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think we've said this on this show almost every week, but it's another one of those massive clubs that you just don't see where they're going right now. So it's a real mess. But nevertheless, that was the weekend that was in EFL. Let's get a quick Brighton update. Two lovely goals from Sam Baldock, Josh. The first one in particular was delightful. Really good celebrations in this as well. I love that. There's three sounds actually I love in football. One is when the ball hits the bar. One is when the ball hits the stanchion behind the goal, and it makes that little clanking sound. And the third one is a small pocket of away fans that just go mental and erupt when they know that their club is on the verge of being promoted or winning something, which is seemingly what's happening at Brighton under a manager who you wanted to give a little bit of credit to, who's just managed his 100th game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was his 100th league game this weekend for Chris Hughton. As Ross alluded to, it's 50 wins in that time. It's 31 draws, 19 losses. And in that group of fixtures, he's also managed to put together 42 clean sheets, which tells you a big story of what a great job he has done for Brighton. He was coming into that job, I think everybody was looking at him to try and consolidate Brighton as a playoff team, and where he's taking them now this season and with the style of football he's got them playing, it's absolutely incredible. And yeah, being on the verge of going up to the Premier League, and the stadium move as well in that has just made a very good feeling around the club. As you say, Sam Baldock's goals were absolutely fantastic. The Mario Kart celebration, which was what he was trying to do, was drop some bananas behind him as he drove off into the corner where the travelling fans were, was absolutely brilliant. As a man who I thought should be doing better for the club. I didn't think he was necessarily good enough, but now that Chuba Akpom has come in, he looks like it's giving him a little bit of a challenger for that starting position as the second striker. So if he keeps putting in goals and Brighton get promoted, then I'll be happy to still see him in the squad. Although I still think they could be worth an upgrade at that point.
Yeah. You're still confident you go up though, surely? Yeah,
absolutely. Top of the league at the moment. Newcastle play Villa on Monday night, which I'm not sure what I'm going to have. I'm going to have to get two screens up because I'm going to have both games on with the Arsenal one and the Newcastle game because they're going to be big games.
Yeah, massive games, I think. And we obviously on this podcast we hope that the Brighton go up because naturally we want you to be happy. So let's hope for good things. Just before we round off the show, we have got a question we're going to finish on. But Ross, I just want to ask you if there's any games that particularly jump out at you in the upcoming week in the Championship or indeed EFL, if there's any that stand out from the lower leagues for next weekend.
I will have to hurriedly check some fixtures. We also do have some midweek fixtures as well because it's Champions League. So we do.
Yes.
We do always have a nice round of fixtures in the Championship whenever the Champions League tries to steal our spotlight.
And the Monday game, of course, which is quite big as well.
Yes, you do have indeed the Monday game. Actually, in fact, I think the only weekday we don't have a game on this week is Thursday. So plenty of games to enjoy. We do have Newcastle versus Aston Villa on Monday, which I think will be very revealing for people who don't watch much of the Championship and haven't seen either of those teams since they went down. Will definitely be worth a watch. In midweek on Tuesday, standout fixture has got to be Huddersfield versus Reading. That's a massive fixture at the top end. I think if Huddersfield win that, they can cut the points gap between them and the top two down to about 4 points. But Reading can cut it down to about 5. So it's a massive, massive game, that. And a draw helps no one, so that'll be worth keeping your eye on. Wednesday you have Bristol City versus Fulham. Friday, one of these games will be on TV. I couldn't tell you. Well, I could probably tell you off the top of my head. It will probably be Wolves versus Birmingham, which will again be absolutely fascinating. We also have Burton versus Blackburn on that one, and then Saturday. There's some very tasty fixtures on the Saturday. You got Leeds versus Sheffield Wednesday, Aston Villa versus Derby, Barnsley versus Huddersfield. Cardiff versus Fulham. I vaguely remember that being an absolute smashing at the start of the season. I think Fulham put 5 past them. I could be wrong, but that will be very interesting, especially on the back of Cardiff's win this weekend. Wigan versus Nottingham Forest will be a very revealing game for Nottingham Forest, I think. And you also have Brighton Hove Albion versus Reading. Again, another massive fixture at the top. If Reading can have 2 wins this weekend, that completely changes the dynamic of the title race. And then on Sunday you have Norwich versus Ipswich. So plenty of fixtures to keep you entertained this week.
Plenty of
Just on that. Just on that last Saturday game, the Brighton fixture, a lot of feeling around the club is if Brighton win that game, they're going up. That is the biggest test we've got in the lineup, even bigger than the Newcastle game that comes later in the year. I think that's in the middle of March sometime. But that game is the big one. If we could beat Reading, then I think it's plain sailing to the Premier League.
No pressure, of course. But
absolutely no pressure, especially if Reading can do us a favour by beating Huddersfield as well. That helps. If the teams below are beating each other, definitely helps.
Yeah, agreed. It's going to be a big week of Championship fixtures. I do like a good midweek roundup of games. It's always fascinating. Last week's was an interesting roundup of games, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of twists and turns this week. Leeds, Sheffield Wednesday, I fancy a look at that, and the derbies, the Birmingham Wolves game and the Ipswich Norwich games will be worth having a look at as well. So I'm going to have to go into full multi-screen mode next weekend. I can see that coming already. Right, we will round off the show then with a question that we had from last week, which we carried over to this week from Chris H, if I'm not mistaken. Josh, you are the man at the wheels of steel with regards to this question. To remind the point that Chris made last week's show, so we're just going to have a very brief sort of viewpoint from all three of us on this. He was talking about the EFL Cup mixed in with the FA Cup and the fact that has the magic been lost from both tournaments, and how can we freshen things up? How can we change things? So, what was the question again? And we can start with your views on it.
Okay, get comfortable. Here we go. It was, what if Premier League teams were ineligible for the EFL Cup? Obviously, the historic FA Cup would still need the top teams included, but if you think the FA Cup is currently lacking respect, the EFL Cup is practically looked upon with disdain by Premier League coaches and fans alike. There's a couple of suggestions for this would improve the EFL Cup. It would make it more meaningful, more interesting fight with fresh and exciting winners because the top teams would be excluded. It would make the FA Cup that much more novel and special for Premiership fans, and you would get you would get one form of compromise for the European Premier League coaches concerned with the scheduling overload on their teams. So I think I'll go to you first, Ross, of what your thoughts are.
I think you will also speak as a fan that's gone through this as well, Josh. But I, as a fan of a team that have gone through the Johnson's Paint Trophy, which excludes Championship and Premier League teams, can tell you that excluding Premier League teams from the EFL Cup wouldn't do the favours that I think people would expect. It would be seen as a lesser cup. It reminds me a lot of the very famous 70s, 80s, 90s parent and childcare strategy of telling every child that they're brilliant and every child that they've got every opportunity and blah, 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 blah. And the losers are the lowest winners or whatever they call them. You can go through all the psychological tests. If you take out the tougher teams and the tougher competition from these kinds of sports, that the people that are left kind of recognise that what you're doing is making it easier for them, and it diminishes their interest in the tournament. And the Johnson's Paint Trophy is a fantastic thing. It's the EFL trophy now for League One and League Two, but it's nowhere near as prestigious as any other cup. If you took the Premier League teams out of the EFL Cup, not only does it hamper teams like Southampton, who are in the final next week, from winning a cup, it's a fantastic opportunity for us. We haven't been to a final since 2003. We haven't won a cup since '76, not a major one anyway. It would rob a lot of Premier League teams of that opportunity, but you would also diminish the necessity for it and the glamour of it. So, personally, I'm not in favour of it. I would rather see them take out the two-legged semi-finals, because I think that's the thing that really pisses people off about the League Cup, is the fact that if you do well in it, you then have to tie yourself out over an already busy winter period.
And I would add to that, I'm sort of with Ross. I wouldn't necessarily take out the Premier League sides. What I would do, the changes I would make, I totally agree on the two-legged semi-finals. I would get rid of those. I would also bring in a handful of Scottish teams, which I know is an idea that's been mooted before. I'd make it, essentially like a UK type of tournament. So, I mean, by all means, you could bring in some Welsh sides, some Irish sides. I mean, you could make it almost a UK trophy. I just think it would give it a bit of an injection. I appreciate the logistics of that would be a little bit tricky if you have to fly to Ireland for a Wednesday fixture, for example. But it would be something you could experiment with. And I would make sure that all Premier League sides had to be drawn away from home for the first, let's say, the first 3 rounds, or when the teams come into the rounds. So the first 2 to 3 rounds, I think I'd make sure they were drawn away from home no matter what, and then that way you would get that little bit more of an upset involved. I wouldn't necessarily put kibosh on what teams play who and what sort of level of players they play. I mean, I just think that's the right of the managers. I do get why people get a bit upset about the fact that teams play string or second string squads, but unfortunately in the world we live in, managers are always going to do it. And I think we only had that one example I think it was Mick McCarthy, wasn't it? It was fined as Wolves manager for fielding an unstrict side at Manchester United years ago. I don't think it's ever come up since, and I think nowadays it's too much of a grey area to find managers, because they would argue, well, our squad is as big as as big as we want it to be, because we deem all the players to have equal qualities.
They have also tried that in the EFL Trophy, punishing teams for rotating too heavily, and that's not worked at all.
That didn't work, did it? No, that really didn't work. I remember that substitute goalkeeper for Bradford in that last minute, or first minute, wasn't it? Something they bought the goalkeeper off. Ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, there are ways around it. I would try it. As far as the FA Cup goes, I think giving a Champions League or even a Europa League spot, or is it a Europa League spot? No, there is a Europa League spot, isn't there, for the winners of that?
Yes, it is.
Maybe upgrade that to a Champions League spot, or even a Champions League playoff spot. One of the two. Just give somebody an incentive to win it. I think the biggest problem you're going to have with the EFL Trophy in particular, or the EFL Cup, is until you get a side maybe from the Championship winning it. I think this argument will run and run. I don't know when the last side out of the top flight won it, but I imagine it was a while ago. So, I just think it's a really difficult one to make massive changes to. And we all know the FA don't particularly like making changes to what they deem as something that works, particularly monetarily wise. So yeah, some interesting ideas. If you've got ideas that you want to share with us, please do. We have another FA Cup show, of course, in a few weeks' time. So if there is anything you want to run by us, or if you want to talk about the magic of the FA Cup, etc., etc., drop us a line or an email, and we'll do our best to answer it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that would be potentially do what they do with the Johnson's Paint Trophy and regionalise the early rounds. That way you'll get more chance of rivalries coming up, and that would always incentivise the teams to do well, because if you end up in an early round with for example, a Manchester derby or a North London derby, it's going to drive more interest in the competition.
Very true. Yeah, very, very true. And weirdly, funny enough, when we've had like Manchester derbies and whatnot in recent years, it seems to have been a lesser affair than it would have been in a bigger tournament. So it's a very cat and mouse situation that we've got. But nevertheless, we thank you for the question, Kris. And again, it's good to sort of carry over a question once in a while, because it's difficult to get to them all at the relevant time. So thank you very much for that question. We appreciate it massively. Right, okay, I think that will bring us to an end for this week's show then. Thank you all for listening. We should just remind all of our listeners who maybe haven't had a chance to tune into last week's show, or indeed last week's event or piece of news, and that is, of course, that we do have an affiliate, an associate, a partner, if you will, and they are giving some fantastic bits and bobs away. Classic Football Shirts is the name of the company, and indeed is the name of our sponsors. So you can visit their website, www.classicfootballshirts.co.uk. I know some of our hipsters have already taken the time to snaffle some goodies, and I know we had a tweet from one of our, who was it last week? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Denver Guna. Dropped us a message last week and said, yes, I've purchased a shirt, and so I'm sure Jabroni, who's winning our fantasy football, said he was going to get a Lorient shirt. I don't know why you'd want to do that. We're absolutely terrible right now, but whatever floats your boat, my good man. So yes, please do get along and show them some love. They are fantastic guys, and Danny, who's got us in touch with the offer with them, has provided us with a very kind 10% off discount code as well. So if you fancy purchasing something from their website, if you use the code CFSAW10, that's CFSAW10, you can get yourself 10% off. So that's a bonus. And if you do purchase anything from their website, please do drop us a line, a tweet, an email, whatever it may be. Send a pigeon if you need be, because we want to give you a shout out. And when your shirt arrives, please do take a picture of it and let us know, and we will tweet a picture with the guys included to give you a little bit of love. So that is Classic Football Shirts. Whether you're full hipster or classic collector, they have something for you. So get along to them now. Right.
I want to see the most hipster shirt we can get someone buying from there.
Absolutely.
I'll put an early benchmark out there. I did use them a couple of months ago to get a Universitario shirt from the Peruvian First Division. Oh. My God, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning burgundy home kit with a very basic U as their badge and a couple of gold stars around it.
And I think what we'll make a commitment of is if we can get at least, I don't know, let's say if we can get 20 people, because that's not too many, if we can get 20 people tweet us to say that they have bought a shirt and prove it to us, we will all club together with podcast funds and we will buy John Welsh a Deportivo Wanker shirt. I think I can't see any fairer than that, and we'll get him to tweet a picture of him in it with that unique sponsorship. So there you go. If you want to see John in a Deportivo Wanker shirt, then you guys need to get purchasing some shirts. So
I can't wait till John hears about this. It's going to be fantastic.
Oh, I do too. I hope he doesn't listen, so that the joke will be on him. People start tweeting him. He'll be like, "What? What's going on here?" So
I've heard he's got one already.
He does, but that's something very different. We don't talk about that. So there we go. Annual rib to John done. And indeed podcast done. So thank you very much for listening if you have been. Of course, if you aren't, you won't have heard this. So thank you very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. You can follow us at the FH Podcast, all the usual pod download places you can find us: SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube being the main three. Also on our website and various other bits and bobs as well. You can drop us an email if you like, and please do visit our website. The regular podcast will return this week, slightly later. We'll be a day late this week because of the Arsenal game tomorrow. Other commitments from my fellow pod buddies. We're going to have to postpone recording for a day later, so we'll be recording on the Tuesday this week, and we'll hopefully get it out that night. So look out for that. Get your questions in early for anything Serie A, La Liga, Liga or Bundesliga. And until next weekend, my thanks to both Ross and Josh. Thank you, gentlemen.
Pleasure as ever.
Yeah, it was great to be on.
And enjoy your midweek EFL action, gentlemen. And until then, Ross will be cuddling his Southampton bear tightly ahead of next week's EFL Trophy final. And until then, we've been the Football Hipsters, and we will speak to you very soon.